Thanks so much for staying on News Desk. Now, the Environmental Protection Agency and National Disaster Management Organization are warning residents living in and around Weija of the potential of the Weija Ridge tumbling down with disastrous consequences. The collapse of the cliff, according to experts, could have disastrous consequences and could also cut off Kasoa from Accra, as the mud will cover the entire road. This warning, issued sometime last week, is not the first. In August 2017, NADMO Director General Eric Nanajiman Prempe warned when he visited Sierra Leone to assist at the mudslide event that Ghana must take a cue from the disaster and act swiftly. Apparently, the warning is yet to be heeded.
I'm just looking at Ebri, I'm just looking at Weija, I'm just looking at McCarthy Hill and other places. We need to seriously take harsh decisions as Africans. The moment we know, and in the case of some parts of Western region and McCarthy Hill, the possibility of tremors and others are there.
So that was a year ago. You may not appreciate the extent of danger residents there are exposed. So take a look.
There is fire on the mountain, and nobody seems to be on the run. Oh, there is fire on the mountain top, and no one is running. I wake up in the morning, tell you what I see on my TV screen. I see the blood of an innocent child, and everybody's watching. Now I'm looking out my window, and what do I see? I see an army of a soldier man marching across the street. Hey. What did it say to make you so blind to your conscience and reason? Could it be love for your country, or for the gun you use in killing? So there is fire on the mountain, and nobody seems to be on the run. Oh, there is fire on the mountain top, and no one is running. Hey, Mr. Loverman, can I get a chance to talk to you? 'Cause you are fooling with a dead man.
Indeed, there is fire on the mountaintop, but residents at the Weija Ridge are unperturbed. They believe they are exposed to danger wherever they find themselves anyway.
Dies. All die, we die. Like Nanadu say, all die, we die. So when you are at the down there, the earthquake, you can die. The same thing, this place too, you can die. So all die, we die.
Maxwell Agbagba visited the area last week. He joins me in the studio. Maxwell, you spoke to this man and a couple other residents, and you get the sense that what he just shared is almost across the board. They don't really care.
Yeah, a lot of them have been living there for some time now, so they are really, used to it. For me, as a first timer, it didn't take me minutes or hours to know the danger that the people are exposed to, because if you're standing at the peak of the ridge and you watch down, we went there with drones, so we had an aerial view of the whole place. You could see deep gullies, just like David Ando's pictures showed, deep gullies running right in front of homes, and you could actually see some of the structures, mansions I should say, hanging dangerously, at the top. What it is that there's been a lot of human activity, there, so the vegetative cover has been completely removed. So what it means is that anytime it rains, we have the running water collecting, you know, the sand and then taking it, you know, downstream. And in fact, when we spoke to some of the people at assembly, they told us that they have to spend thousands of Ghana cedis just collecting the silt that is usually collected after rain. So it comes from the top and then downstreams, and then it stretches into the roads and then into the gutters. So there's heavy erosion, you know, going on there. What the experts are also telling us is that what we have there at the ridge is not that we have any like really strong rocks. So the one of the municipal engineers was telling us that it's more of like sedimentary, you know, rocks, and these are made of, you know, silt, like just some clay and then silt and some bits of stones in there. So continuously, you've had the human activity going on there for a very long time. Some quarrying activities also. We know the people were stopped about 2 years ago, but before they were stopped, some of them were
the
actually
damage had already been caused.
Had already been caused. Some of them. Okay.
Sorry to cut in, Maxwell, but you mentioned that you spoke to an engineer from the Ghana South Municipal Assembly. What have they been telling you about what they're doing to either evict residents or assist their evacuation?
Okay, he says that although they've identified the problem and they are trying their best, in fact, they've been policing the area to make sure that new structures do not spring up. He was not specific and emphatic about any demolition, you know, happening anytime soon, because he says there are procedures that they would have to follow, because we're looking at a very large area with a lot of buildings.
But
all these
these buildings have permit, really?
What he said was that majority of the buildings there at the top of the, you know, ridge do not have, you know, permits, and they've never issued permits as assembly to the occupants of those structures. He says that majority of them, you know, put up the buildings either during holidays or during the weekend when the assembly, you know, task force, you know, is not at work. So during the weekday, really, you don't find anybody putting up any structure. You come back from the, you know, you come back after the weekend, and then you see new buildings, you know, springing up.
But is that to suggest that the buildings are put up in a matter of days? But at least with every progress, we would expect to see some work done. But that's not a question for you to answer. It's for the engineers at the Municipal Assembly to answer. But Maxwell, you went to Sierra Leone last year when that unfortunate incident happened on the Sugarloaf mountain. You have seen with your eye firsthand the kind of disaster that is possibly looming here. Tell us how these two relate.
Well, as we watched, we already watched the coordinator for NADMO, you know, mention in there. What we have now is much akin to the situation in Sierra Leone. You know, after the civil war in Sierra Leone, they had a lot of people moving from the rural areas to the urban areas. They didn't really have land to put up new structures. So what happened was that people started putting up buildings on the mountains. And if you go to Freetown, which is the capital of Sierra Leone, it's a very hilly area. So really, the flat surface for you to put buildings are very few. So people were compelled to put up those structures on the mountain. Now, an environmentalist in Sierra Leone, we are told, rang the alarm bells and then told the people that, look, it's dangerous putting up structures on the Sugarloaf Mountain, because you had real estate developers using the sand from the mountain, using the rocks from the mountain, and then using them to put up their own structures, like mansions on the Sugarloaf Mountain.
On the same mountain?
On the same mountain. So when you go there where the incident happened, it's a mix of, you know, shacks, and then mansions. Unlike what we have at the Weija Ridge, where you only have mansions up there, only for the rich. This one at the Sugarloaf Mountain was a mix of the shacks and then the mansions, you know, up there. So an environmentalist actually raised the concern, we are told, but he was killed by, you know, some of the people, some of the residents. That's what, you know, we are actually told. So some years after he raised the concern, then you had, you know, this incident happen. In fact, if you go to the Sugarloaf Mountain where the people have put up the structure, the entire vegetative cover has equally been, you know, destroyed, like just what we are witnessing at the Weija Ridge. So what you have now is just the bare, you know, sand. So anytime it rains, then it washes down continuously, and then it came tumbling down. And at the end of the day, about close to 1,000 people actually, you know, died. And I think it's important that the EPA is taking steps to actually address the situation, because really, if we do not, we're just sitting on a time bomb waiting for it, you know, to explode.
Now, talking about what happened in Sierra Leone just reminds me of stories we've done here. When it rains, we see sand and silt
Yeah.
come from this ridge down onto the roads,
Yeah.
and sometimes causing a lot of vehicular traffic. So for those of you who may be a bit skeptical or you doubt the warning from the authorities, just pick a cue from what happens every time it rains. We'll still keep our eyes on the story and let you know if the authorities decide to do anything drastic in terms of eviction or evacuation. Thank you very much, Maxwell Agbagba, for joining me.